Greetings, it's Ian from RTO here. Welcome to Marathon Ranking Day, being a Wednesday where we take on the bigger catalogues. And today we've got a viewer's request, and it is for the Enid. Now the Enid have got a Northampton connection, believe it or not. So the Enid, founded in 1973 by keyboardist Robert John Godfrey, Stephen Stewart, and this is the name I love, Francis Licorice. Now they're a band, one way to describe them as a combination of classic and rock, and orchestral movements, exclusively classical instrumentations, rigorous construction, completely well written and romantic rock music led by Robert Godfrey. Now they've made 14 albums, but I have not included any other remakes of their previous stuff and re-recorded because I didn't see the point. I just wanted to concentrate on their new music. People have said they're the only band on the planet to have successfully fused rock-based music with power, dynamic scale of symphonic classical music. So they have made 14 albums, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. So coming in at number 14 from 2019, it's the most current album, and it's called You. Now you want to know the Northampton connection. This is actually recorded here in Northampton. Robert has got a studio called The Lodge here in Northampton, and it's in the heart of the town. I think everybody knows where it is. One day I might do a video and show you where it is. So it is. This album was recorded here in Northampton. So playing on here, we've got Jason Ducker on guitars, bass, Robert Godfrey on the keyboards, Dave Story on the drums. So the first track on this album is called In the Region of the Winter Star. This is very typical Enid. Dramatic, some nice guitar work, soothing strings, really good. Duplicity is another good track. It's nice and gentle. Some lovely flute on here. It's more classical than prog. Then Homely, the shortest track on here at 3 minutes 10. It's got some lovely guitar tones on it. Humours. It's a bit. This is one of those tracks that goes on and on. It starts very quiet and it takes such a long time to get going, like 5 minutes. I really don't get into that one. A Peak in the Darien, which is another gentle classical thing. It has got some nice classical guitar and piano on it. Then we have You, the last track. Some nice guitar on there. There's a lot of strings on this. It's a pleasant enough album. It doesn't seem to have the same sort of impact as some of their classic albums. It's a good listen, but I don't know. It just didn't have to deliver the same punch. But I'm still going to give this an RTO ranking of 6 out of 10. Coming in at number 13 from 1985 is The Spell. We've got Stephen Stewart on guitar, Robert Godfrey on the keyboards, Glyn Evans on bass, Dave Story on drums, with Francis Licorice on guitars, Martin Wallace keyboards, Tony Fear keyboards and woodwind, Terry Pack on the bass, and Dean and Matthew on percussion. The first track is called Winter at the Key. Very, very dramatic start. And it's like an overture, a classical overture, and then it sort of fades out a little bit. Then we get Spring. This isn't too bad. Some nice guitar bits in that one. Summer, the best track on the album. It's got this sort of vocally thing in the middle, which is quite daunting in Aerie, which really gives it that eeriness and a bit of variation. Autumn. Now this is very similar to Spring. There's not much variation on it. And then we have a track called Elephants Never Die. This is a strange track. A bit of a Gregorian sort of sound and with 80s sort of thing. It didn't really ring with me. The Sentimental Side of Mrs. James. Not a fan of this, but it has got a nice piano piece on it. It's not a bad album. There are a couple of memorable songs, but I wouldn't say it's the best thing that the Enid ever put out. So I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 6.3. Coming in at number 12 then, from 2016, we have Dust. And we've got Joe Payne on lead vocals. We've got some vocals on this one. Robert Godfrey on the keyboards and orchestral arrangements. Jason Ducker on guitar and bass. Max Reed as the choir vocoder. Nick Willis on bass and Dave Story on drums. We've got Dominic Tofield on drums. Zachary Bullock on keyboards. So the first track on here is called Born Into the Fire. The start of this, it sounds like the start of the music to Red Dwarf at the beginning. Very strange. That's a very strange vocal as well. Someone Shall Rise. I like the start of this, and then you get this sort of choir in it. It really is a pretty good track. Monsters. Sounds like it's come off from a stage musical. It's a great vocal. 1000 Stars, my favourite track on here. Dramatic, it's got a really good solo on it. The vocal on here is excellent as well. Then we get When the World Is Full. Again, it sounds like it comes straight off a soundtrack. It's orchestral, very dramatic. Then we have Trophy. Probably the weakest track on here. It's a bit of a mishmash of things. Doesn't really thing with me. Heavy Hearts, the last track. Now this is a fusion of classical music and pop, and it works. The drumming's great on this. It's my second favourite track on the album. Once again, we've got a very pleasant album, and it sounds more like a soundtrack album or a stage show. But there's nothing wrong with it, so I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 6.5. Okay, coming in at number 11 from the year 2015, we have The Bridge. Once again, Joan Payne does the vocals. Got Max Reed doing the choir and programming. Jason Ducker on guitars. Robert Sayre on the piano and orchestrations. So the first track on here is called Earthborn. This is a really nice, gentle track. A lovely vocal. It's very dreamy. This is the shorter version. There is a longer version on the Seeds and the Sower. Till We're Old, another short piano piece. Lovely vocal from Joe. I do like that. Dark Corner of the Sky. This is very classical music orientated with some lovely flute on it. Bad Men. Now when you hear this, you think you're going to get Rhapsody in Blue by Gershwin. At the start it's very much like that, and then it goes into its own thing. I quite like that track. Now My Gravity does really show the vocal range of Joe Payne. It's very dramatic, theatrical, orchestral, good track. Wings. Another dramatic track with an excellent vocal, again from Joe, but the piano work from Mr. Godfrey is outstanding on this. My favourite track on here is First Light. I love the backing singers on this. It's gentle, it's dramatic as well. And then we have another version of Autumn, which is okay. It's a good way to end the album. A very good vocal from Joe Payne on this album. A classical music extravaganza more this one is, and I do like it, and I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 6.6. Okay, coming in at number 10 from 1986, and it's called Salome. On here we've got Stephen Stewart on the guitar, Robert Godfrey on keyboards, Dave Story on drums. Also drumming on here we've got Chris North and Damien Roysden. The first track is called Oh Salome. Very interesting track. It's a combination of prog music, orchestral music, and it really works. It sort of absorbs itself into the track. Very clever. I mean, Robert was fantastic at doing this. It's an amazing piece of music. Next up is Sheets of Blue, my favourite track on here. I love the guitar work on here from Stephen Stewart. It's just something about it. The keyboard work from Robert is fantastic. And again, how it fuses together with the orchestral bits, it really works. The change, I love the start to this. It's got this tribal drum beat, and there's a little bit of tribal singing in it, and then it goes into this sort of dramatic track. Really good. It really just builds up, and then we get the jack, and after the last track of lots of aggression and vibrancy, we get this nice gentle track with more choral and strings. It's very, very relaxing. The Flames of Power. Now this is just a real continuation of the jack. Again, we got some lovely orchestral arrangements and strings. Very good to end the album. Pretty good album. I enjoyed listening to this one. It's got the different moods on it. I love all the orchestration on this. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 6.8. Okay, coming in at number 9 from 1988, we have The Seed and the Sower. On here, we have got Stephen Stewart on guitar, Robert Godfrey on the keyboards, Niall Feldman on bass, Damien Risden on the drums. We've got Geraldine Connor doing vocals on Mother Earth. Troy Donockley, who gets around on lots of albums, is currently with Nightwish. He does the low whistle. Now this was inspired by the book The Seed and the Sower by Lawrence van der Post. And the first track on here is called Chaldean Crossing. I love this. It's got a little bit of triangle on it, which is interesting. It's got some lovely tones. It's an excellent opening to the album. A Bar of Shadow. The start is really bassy. And then you get this low whistle, this Celtic sound comes thing. It's really good. Then we have a La Rage. Now this sounds like a 1980s sci-fi soundtrack from a TV series. It's dramatic. It really does work. It's a little bit cheesy, but I do like that. Long Home, my favourite track on here. I think this has got some of the best guitar work on the album. It's bright, it's dramatic. Then we get the longer version of Earthborn. It's a great track. I love the short version, but this is the full version. Is wonderful and a great track to end the album. A solid album from the Enid, from top to bottom. There's not a bad track on this one. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 7 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 8 from 1994. Tripping the Light Fantastic. Again, this was recorded in Northampton. And playing on here, we've got Nick May on guitar, Robert Godfrey on keyboards, Max Reed on vocal and bass. Now the drumming on here is done by a gentleman called Wayne Cox. Now Wayne, at the time, I know he lives in Ireland now, but at the time he was living in Northampton. Him and his brother had a band called Rag Doll. They were very nice guys. Both of them supported my sort of day centre I was working in when we did charity events. They were really nice guys. Wayne was a character, and he drums on 3 tracks on this album. And then the other drumming is done by Stephen Hughes. So the first track on here is called Ultraviolet Cat. It's okay. It's very sort of dancey in places, which is not what I'm expecting from the Enid. Then we have Little Shiners. One of my favourite tracks on here, though. It's so dreamy. Then we have Gateway. Now the drumming's good on here because it's Wayne. Now I know Wayne's a great drummer. He was used to playing more Bon Jovi and Aerosmith style, but he's this shows what a really good drum. There's lots of little traits I hear on this, and I can imagine him doing it. So yeah, the drumming's good on here. That's just a bit biased, but there you go. I think it's a great track anyway. But my favourite track is the title track, Tripping the Right. Fantastic. The guitars are brilliant, but there's some intricate drumming here from Wayne, and yeah, we remember him when he said he was joining the Enid as well, so it was all quite fun. It's an excellent track. Then we have Freelance Human. This is an orchestral piece from Robert. Brilliant, love it. My favourite though is Dark Hydraulic. I think the guitar work is brilliant on this. It's a proper progressive track, and when I first heard this, I couldn't believe, you know, what Wayne could do, because all I'm used to seeing was going at 100 miles an hour. But this is just intricate stuff, and I think it's one of the best things I've heard Wayne drum on. So excellent stuff. And then the last track is called The Biscuit Game. This is my favourite classical piece on here. The orchestral thing on here, it's very 1812 overture in places. You've got the gentleness, the crescendo, the finale. It's absolutely brilliant. Obviously I've heard this album quite a lot because it did feature Wayne, and I think this is the thing. And I know, I mean, the other thing about Robert, he used to hang around in Northampton a lot, obviously with his studio, and you could see him some Fridays sitting in the King Billy, but everyone knew who he was, but no one, we used to, you know, you say, all right, Robert, how you doing, all that sort of thing, but you never got that fame sort of thing. Bit like when we had Neil Shepherd, who was in Tigers of Pangtang, you know. He just was in the pub having a drink like the rest of us on a Friday night. I mean, it is a good album, so I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 7.2. Okay, coming in at number 7 from 2010, we have Journey's End. Another album recorded in Northampton. It's Max Reed on vocals, Jason Ducker on the guitars, Robert on the keyboards as ever, Nick Willis bass, Dave Story as ever on the drums, Joe Payne does some singing on here, and Elsa the dog does a growl. There we go. So the first track is called Terra Firma, an interesting track, very quirky keyboards from Robert on this. The vocals are good, I do like the track. Now Terra Nova is a more gentler, more atmospheric and got ambience, some nice delicate touches on the keyboards. Space Surfing, my favourite track on there. It's quite psychedelic, some nice effects on this, and halfway through it goes into this real rock track, and that's what really has got some grit. I like that. Then we have another long track called Malacandra, a track of two halves. The first part is more classical and dramatic, and then in comes the prog halfway through. It's a pretty solid track. Shiver again is a mixture of prog and classical with some nice choral vocals on it. Super little track. Then we have The Art of Melody, Journey's End. This is one of those orchestral arrangements, and it's lovely and subdued, and it just takes you on a dreamy journey. Excellent. Once again, the combination of orchestral music and prog and rock incorporates this album all the way through. It's a super album, so I'm going to give it an RTO ranking of 7.5. Time for a little drink, I think. Okay then, coming in at number 6 from 1997, we have White Goddess. Max Reed on guitars, Grant Jameson on guitars, Robert Godfrey on the keyboards, and Dave Story on the drums. First track is called Prelude, and it's a typical sort of prelude, lots of effects and sounds and bits of orchestra, and it builds up and then it goes straight into the track Fantasy. And I love Robert's keyboard on this, and the strings, they just give it that little bit extra depth. But the one that sort of puts the icing on the cake on this one is the lovely bit of flute as well. Really good. And then we have Rigger Garden. I just love how Robert actually mixes the prog and the classic music today. He fuses it wonderfully. Wonderful piece of music. Then we have a track that Sarabande, can't remember who composed it, but Sky have done it, John Lord's done it. This one's really good. The guitar work on it is wonderful. I just love that track. Then we have Waltz, and it's very Johann Strauss. Nice piece of music. Ballade, or Ballade, a short piece, wonderful playing by Robert on that. Galvote, not quite sure what this is. I think it's just Robert playing around in the studio. But my favourite track on here is a little thing called Chaconne. The bass is brilliant, and it feels like it's being played next to you. You can hear the vibration through it. And then when everything else comes in, it just blows your mind away. It's got orchestral, it's got a bit of prog in there. It's an excellent track. And then we got Jiggy or Jigu. Some great drumming on this. I love the high-pitched piano. It really is striking. It just really makes it. And then the last track is Nocturne, which is a wonderful orchestral piece, and it's fantastic to end the album. A very underrated album this is to me. It's beautiful musicianship on this. And it's a shame that he didn't get the accolade that he deserved, because this is a super album. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 7.6. Okay, coming in at number 5 then, we got the 14th album, and it was released in 2012, and it's called Invicta. Robert Godfrey on here, Max Reed on guitars, Dave Storage on drums, Jason Ducker on the guitars, Joe Payne is back doing some vocals, and bass is Nicholas Willis. So the first track is a little opening short piece, a minute long, called Anthropery. I'm having struggles today. It's a nice short piece, and it builds up, and then it goes straight into the main track, which is One and the Many. Very classical, some beautiful string arrangements on here. It's near enough a waltz. There's a real choral piece in it. It's excellent all the way through. Who Created Me? It's very George Gershwin at the beginning on the piano, and the vocal of Joe Payne is fantastic on this. It's dramatic. It's a great vocal. Execution Mob starts off with sounds of the countryside with birds, a little bit of War by a Stream. It's an interesting track. The vocals are quite harmony, and it's got a real deep voice as well. It's really dramatic, and got some nice bongos playing on that as well. Witch Hunt. It's not the best track on the album. I'm not keen on that one. Heaven's Gate. Now this sounds a very sort of English classical piece. You know, Benjamin Britten sort of thing. Excellent. Then we have Leviticus, which is basically a bit of from the Bible. That's what the music is. It's okay. But my favourite track on here is Villain of Silence. Again, this is a mixture of rock and classical. It's a great vocal from Joe. Then we have this nice choral thing called The Whispering to end the album. This is sort of my favourite of the later albums. It's a gentle album. It's got some good mixture of gentleness and good rock. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 7.8. Okay, coming in at number 4, got the third album, released in 1979, and it's called Touch Me. So you've got Robert Godfrey on here, Stephen Stewart on guitars, Francis Licorice on guitars, William Gilmore on keyboards, Terry Pack on the bass, Dave Story on the drums, Tony Freer on the oboe. So, first track on here is called Charades 1, Humoresque. This is such classical, sort of a triumphant parade sort of thing. Then you got some excellent guitar work on this. This is excellent. Then we have Charades 2, Cortege. Again, it feels like a medieval cortege going down the street. You know, it really is good. Very sort of mythical. Charades 3, the Elegy, Touch Me. It's a short piece. Lovely piano playing from Robert. He's a fine pianist. Then Charades 4, Gallivant. And again, it's got lots of grandeur and sounds like a parade. It really is good. Then my favourite track on here is a thing called Albion Fair. Again, split into 2 parts. The first part is the shorter, just over 6 minutes. It's dreamy keyboards. The sound of it is very eerie. And then you get the dramatic second part. The flute builds up, and applying that flute just keeps it toned in. It's a wonderful piece of music and a great track to end the album. Great album again from top to bottom. I do love this. It's that unique style of progressive rock that you just love from the Enid. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8 out of 10. Okay, coming in at number 3, we have the debut album from 1976, and it's called In the Region of the Summer Stars, and it's based on tarot sequence and writings of Charles Williams. So it's Robert Godfrey, Stephen Stewart, Francis Licorice, Glenn Tollett on the bass, Neil Kavanagh on the flute, Dave Story on the drums, Dave Hancock on the trumpet. The first track is 2 tracks sort of put together. It's The Fool and The Falling Tower. Now the Fool is a little bit of entrance, a bit of piano, very nice, and then it goes into the Falling Tower, which has got this lovely Spanish guitar, and it sort of builds up. It's a good little rocker towards the end. Then we have Death the Reaper, one of these tracks that builds up with different layers coming in, and then towards halfway you get this wonderful keyboard run. Absolutely super track. The Lovers. Again, it's a lovely piano work, Rhapsody in Blue sort of thing. I think Robert had a thing for that piece of music. There's a lot of tracks that are sort of based around that. My favourite track on here is called The Devil. It's, for a start, it's got a great bass line. It's a mixture of prog and symphonic rock for the time, and it was something different. Then we have The Sun. This starts off with a great bass line, some lovely guitar. It's a super little track, a good rock track that is. The Last Judgment. Now this has got the similar start to the Bolero, that bum bum ba, but it doesn't go into that. But it's a fantastic track, and I love how the orchestral arrangement works well on there. Then we have In the Region of the Summer Stars, great prog track. It's got some great keyboard in this, a great track to end the album. Now this was a great debut album, a little bit different from what was going on at the time. So I'm going to give this an RTO ranking of 8.3. Okay, then coming in at number 2, the second album from 1977. It's called Aerie, Faerie, Nonsense. Robert Godfrey, Stephen Stewart, Francis Licorice, Charlie Elston on the keyboards on this, Terry Pack on the bass, Dave Story as ever on the drums, and Dave Hancock's back on the trumpet. Once again we get a prelude. It's a little short piece, nice keyboards, which goes into Mayday Gilead. And I love this track. It's very medieval, but it's got a little bit of synthesizer and guitars that sort of brings it into 77, but it's still, its roots are very medieval. Undine is next. The keyboard is so eerie, it's atmospheric. Love it. Child Roland, one of those tracks that sort of keeps going, the pace goes up and down through it, it's got strings, it's got a very atmospheric piece, excellent track. Fandai starts off gentle, and then you halfway through you get this Hammond organ that sort of wakes you up, and it's really good. Then we get Fan 2. My favourite piece is just basically keyboard and organ and synthesizers. Very Jean-Michel Jarre, believe it or not. That's probably why I like it. They certainly built on that debut album and took it to the next level on this. The sound was a bit more richer on this album. I especially love the fan movement. It's fantastic. So I'm going to give this album an RTO ranking of 8.5. But my favourite Enid album, and it has been for a little while, from 1986 pieces. So Frankish Licorice on guitars and bass, Stephen Stewart guitars, Robert Godfrey on the keyboards, William Gilmore does keyboards, Martin Russell on keyboards, and Robbie Dobson on the drums. The first track is a brilliant track called Punchin' Judy Man. It's a proper progressive rock track. Some nice keyboard runs on this. The drumming from Robbie Dobson is fantastic. One of my favourite tracks on here. Then they do Once She Was Scarborough Fair. To Scarborough Fair. It's a great piece of music, and they do a great version. This has got a bit of a synthesizer feeling. It's a deep and meaningful version. I love it. Then we have the Ringmaster. The drumming on here is super. Very early Jethro Tull in places with a little bit of Gentle Giant sound thrown in as well. Excellent track. Then we have my favourite on here. It's called Sanctus. It's got this wonderful rumbling drum beat. There's a bit of symphony drums on it as well. It's got the keyboards are so dreamy. Wonderful piece of music. All the Mirrors. Starts off dreamy and then it just builds up with layers and keyboards and guitars and drums. Really good. And the last track, The Dreamer, starts like cymbals and gongs and sound effects, and then it gets through this sort of dreamy phrase. I love this. It reminds me of bits of Tangerine Dream, bit of Vangelis in there. I really love it. It's a great track to end the album. I think this is one of the first Enid albums I ever heard. And I've never heard anything like it. I love this album. It gets played quite a lot. So I'm going to give this one an RTO ranking of 8.6. So there we go. The Enid. Robert Godfrey drank in the King Billy, has a studio in Northampton, and a mate of mine played in the band. Not bad, is it? Okay, that's all for today. We'll be back tomorrow, and tomorrow we've got the first quarter final of Battle Royale, and it is between Blue Monday and You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet from New Order and Batman Turn Overdrive. And what we got tomorrow for Pick and Mix, we're going to have a trip down memory lane. We're going to look at the top 10 singles on the 20th of February 1981. I was in hospital at the time, so these songs really mean something to me. So don't forget, tomorrow is live stream day. Have a great day. Bye for now.